Welcome back to Cynthia Untamed. This is your youthful and educational platform where we have conversations with and about children and young people in Africa. If you are new here, thank you for being part of Cynthia Untamed. And if you are a returning subscriber, I truly appreciate you on this platform. Remember to tell a friend to tell a friend. I'm going out. One of the very few times I ever go out of the house because of this pandemic. So come and have lunch with me, and I hope that you'll have some fun.
유난히도 캄캄한 밤에 나 홀로 너를 생각하네. 이런 기분 설명할 수 없어. 원래 이맘쯤 너와의 여행을 생각했었는데 네가 좋아하던 와인과 선물을 준비했겠지. 기뻐할 너를 상상하며 근데 왜 이런 생각을 하면서 너를 추억만 하게 된 건지 어쩌다 너와 나 왜 이렇게 끝난 건지 너를 기억하면 난 가슴이 아파와 어쩌다 너와 나 이렇게 잊혀진다면 다시 사랑할 수 없을 것 같아. 그날의 나는 내게 너무 낯설었겠지. 내 맘과 다르게 너에게 상처를 줬으니 사랑한다는 말로도 부족했던 너에게 내가 너무 잘못한 것 같아. 너와 나의 다른 생각이 결국엔 우리를 서로 갈라서게 만들었어. 근데 왜 이런 얘기를 하게 된 건지 난 모르겠어. 어쩌다 너와 나 왜 이렇게 끝난 건지 너를 기억하면 난 가슴이 아파와 어쩌다 너와 나 이렇게 잊혀진다면 다시 사랑할 수 없을 것 같아. 말은 해줘야 하는데.
Hey, I'm back. What did you think of the meal? I personally, for me, I thought it was very delicious. The food was great. I think I have marked Trattoria as one of my favorite places in Nairobi for now. I really loved the pasta, and the lemonade was just amazing. So delicious, so well made, so filling. And then there was just some bit of spice, some bit of pepper. Oh, it was so delicious. And now we are back to some aspect of the video that I hope you can take back home in terms of lessons learned. Today on Cynthia Untamed, we're going to play a game of Never Have I Ever, the leadership edition. I do hope that as we play this game that you're going to learn some lessons on leadership and why you as a young person should embrace that value. So let's begin. I have my card here. First, never have I ever been on TV or radio. I have been on TV and on radio as well, and not as a newscaster, not as a reporter, but as a young person who was being interviewed for the work that I do in the community. One of my very first interviews was on Family Radio. It's actually a Christian radio here in Kenya. I'm not sure if it airs across the continent, but it definitely airs here in Kenya. And we were having a conversation about young people in leadership. This was way back in 2017, I believe. 2017 or 2018. I was in the panel with two other young people. There was a hairstylist, and I can't seem to remember who the other person was. Or were we two of us? I'm trying to remember, but I definitely remember that there was a young person who does hairstyling. She's called Anita. You've probably seen her work on Instagram. Her work is Hair by Makanye. Hair by Makanye. So we were interviewed together. Both of us were law students at the University of Nairobi. So she was a law student who was pursuing her passion in hairstyling, and I was a young person who was pursuing my passion in community service and advocacy for children's rights. So you can see that even as a student in school, you really don't need to be the conventional student. You can do so much. Just because you're studying medicine does not mean that you need to restrict yourself to medicine. You can actually be a medicine student who's passionate about social justice issues, and so you can get involved in legal activities, and even you'll find out that even as you give evidence in court as a medical expert, you'll have learned about social issues. That's just a tip. You can also pick out very many other skills that you may like. You may be interested in tech. You may be interested in cooking, baking, embroidery, basically anything that inspires you. You truly do not have to be one kind of a person. Next question. Never have I ever taken part in a talent show. I have never. Unfortunately, I saw this one and I felt so sad, because it was like, how have I never ever participated in a talent show? Even as a child, I never participated in a talent show. Never actively. Well, you know, the way we usually do on the front line participation. So for example, like in high school, we used to have the Miss Bush program, and that meant that we were looking for like the queen of the school for a particular year. I never participated in that. I never participated in any other activities that would display my talent, and I think I missed out on that, because I believe that talent shows, small or big, whatever size they may be, enable children to grow some kind of confidence and to also develop their gifts. For example, when we used to do the Miss Bush talent show, people would actually make outfits out of things. I remember there was this girl who made a dress out of 50 shillings Kenyan notes. So I don't know where she got the 50 shillings Kenyan notes. I don't know where she got so many of them, and she made a dress out of them. Someone else made a dress out of sisal and coconut shells. I'll tell you, when I look back, I think, oh wow, I truly missed out on the fun, but I also missed out on showcasing my talent or discovering. The only one that I could say I did, but I don't think it really counts, is when we were in class 6 and we were having a play in class, and we had people who were acting, and my role was more behind the scenes. I remember I had made a camera for myself. How was it? Yeah, I took a stick and then I attached a piece of cloth, and then I was pretending that I was a reporter who was reporting about that event. So my work was more of behind the scenes. I was not really at the front line, because I knew with that role nobody would be looking at what I was doing, and of course there was no footage to come and check and see, oh, did you do any good footage? Did you ever take any good pictures? But yes, I have never participated in a talent show, but I do encourage you to participate in one. Next question. Never have I ever met someone famous. I have met lots of famous people, to be honest, so many. But let me talk about two, because I think you'll come out with some lessons. So one of the famous people I met is the CEO of the Equity Bank Group, Dr. James Mwangi. If you are not familiar with Dr. James Mwangi, he's one of the most respected businessmen in this country, in Kenya, and he's been leading Equity Bank for as long as I can remember. I don't think I know an Equity Bank without Dr. James Mwangi. So in 2015, I went to their equity offices. It's actually a very long story, but I went to their equity offices because I had realized that a lot of young people are going through lots of challenges, like being out of school, poverty, drug abuse, and this was drawn from a conversation I had with one of my one of the youth fund coordinators for my village. So I talked to my mentor about it, and she told me about Professor Wangari Maathai, how she had interviewed her and had asked her, what will you do for Kenya? And Professor Wangari Maathai had said, don't ask me what I will do, ask yourself what you will do. And so my mentor passed on the same challenge to me. And so I walked to the Equity. First, I wrote to so many organizations to help me solve this challenge. And then Equity Bank is the one that called back and told me I could go to their offices. So when I got there, they couldn't give me a job, and they were seeing that I was trying to solve a challenge. So they told me about this mentorship program that they usually have through the Equity Wings to Fly program, and asked if I would be interested to be a volunteer mentor, even if I was not a scholar. And that's how my journey of advocacy truly began. Well, it began in many ways, but that's one of the starting points of my advocacy journey. And so I met Dr. James Mwangi, I think a couple of months later, during the Global Entrepreneurship Summit in 2015 when President Barack Obama came. It was a very brief interaction, but I remember I was there with some of my friends, and Dr. James Mwangi came to speak at the event, one of the side events at KICC, the Kenyatta International Convention Center in the Nairobi CBD, and we saw him and we got excited. We were like, let's go see this guy and greet him. And when I went to him, I told him I'm a volunteer mentor with the Equity Wings to Fly program, and he was so excited, and he said, keep up the great work. Yeah. So that was an amazing point for me. That brief as the interaction was, it was a huge thing for me, and I have a picture of me interacting with him. The other famous person I met a few years ago again is Ambassador Amina Mohammed, who I have mentioned a lot on my videos because she really inspired me to go and get my practicing certificate as an advocate of the High Court of Kenya. And what I really liked about my interaction with her was that one day we went to do a workshop with children, a children's workshop on the Convention on the Rights of the Child in Garissa. And I remember I was telling my friend, we could be going to Garissa like this, and maybe Ambassador Amina Mohammed is also on the way. So at the time, she was the Minister for Education, and it was around KCP, KCSE times. And in Kenya, what usually happens around that season is that the minister usually goes around checking schools whether papers are right and all that. And so we were in this one of the hotels in Garissa, and we just joked, maybe Ambassador Amina Mohammed will be around. Who knows? And I remember I had done these random questions for the children, and they had to pick them and then answer as they introduced themselves. So one of the random questions was who is your role model? So there's a boy who picked it up, and he said, my role model is Ambassador Amina Mohammed. So I got so excited. Do you know, I think the more we kept talking about her, it's like the more she kept approaching without our knowledge. And later in the day, one of my colleagues was outside, and he comes back and he tells me, Cynthia, I've just seen Ambassador Amina Mohammed in the building. I'm like, what do you mean? So there's this courageous colleague of mine again who was so excited, and I was like, I'm going to call her so that she can come and say hi to this boy. And she went, found her along the corridors, and she came for a few minutes and met this boy, and I felt like she was meeting me as well. It was so exciting. I was so excited for this child. I was just like, his dream came true, and there's nothing that encourages me more than seeing a child's dream come true. And then on World Children's Day, I had the opportunity to share a podium with her because I was collaborating with the children to have a dialogue with Ambassador Amina Mohammed, the Australian High Commissioner to Kenya, and Ambassador Amina Mohammed, the Australian High Commissioner to Kenya, and the UNICEF Kenya representative, to have a conversation on the rights of children, and with a specific focus on education. And that was just amazing to see. All right. The next question. Never have I ever learned a foreign language. I don't know whether to say yes or no to this one. But when I joined Form 1, I took French for a term, and then I dropped it. No, actually, I had started learning French in class 6, but I really struggled because I had not been learning French from a young age. And when I joined class 6, the teacher was not very considerate to those of us who had come from public schools where we were not learning French. And our teacher was Rwandese, so I never used to understand anything. I really struggled with it. Class 6 and class 7. In class 8, we didn't have to take French, so I just survived the system. But when I joined Form 1, I realized that the textbook that the French teacher was using was the same textbook that my class 6 French teacher was using. And so the moment I realized that, I decided to take French in Form 1. But it's a long story. I never got to do French. After I did French for, I think, 2 months, after half term, when I came back, I dropped French and then started business studies. But when I look back, I really wish I had taken French all the way to Form 4 and not taken business studies. I feel that French would have benefited me more now, working in an international space, because I see a lot of opportunities, not just outside of Kenya, like in West Africa or French-speaking countries, but even just here in Kenya, like Canadian High Commission, like places where French is one of the other languages. And I feel that not having a basis for French from the beginning in Form 1 has made me miss out on opportunities. However, after Form 4, I tried to do Chinese because, in Kenya, a lot of our infrastructure is built by the Chinese. So I tried to do Chinese. I think I did Chinese for probably 2 months, but the school I was in was closed. It was a school somewhere on Tomboya Street. Yeah, it was a school somewhere on, Tomboya Street, somewhere around Afya Center there, and the school was closed. In Kenya, some of these schools that are opened in some of these streets are usually closed. But the reason why I had taken up that institution is because now the more credible institutions are very expensive, like Confucius Institute at the University of Nairobi was very expensive. So after the school was closed, I lost the motivation to learn Chinese. So yes, I have learned a foreign language, but not learned a foreign language. So maybe yes or no there. Never have I ever been out of the country. I have been out of the country so many times. Well, not so many times, but a good number of times. But in the last 2 years, I have not been out of the country, because when COVID-19 pandemic came, everything was shut down, and all the engagements I have done have just been virtual. I hope that sometime soon I'll have an opportunity to travel out of the country. But traveling out of the country really gave me so much insight. I learned so many lessons. I learned about culture. I learned about asking for help. I learned so many things. I learned how to use public transportation means in the developed world. Oh my goodness, I'm telling you, it's a whole thing when you're traveling out of your country of birth and you've never been out of the country. I remember my first trip out of Kenya was to Johannesburg, South Africa, where we went to launch a youth report on the future of African children and young people. And I got to learn so much. One of the things I learned, besides the report, which was focusing on the future of African children, basically talking about how by 2050, Africa will have a very young population. And so we need to enable young people to attain skills for life. But I remember I had had stories of racism, stories of even things as simple as hair, the texture of your hair. And it's only until you're in spaces where people experience these kinds of things that you realize they're actually real life issues. So I remember, like, there was this girl who was telling me in her school they were forced to straighten their hair. Their hair had to be completely straight, either permed or blow dried. And you can imagine this is a girl of African descent, like she's fully black. So definitely her hair will not be straight and not curl in a certain pattern. There's a way African hair looks. And she was telling me how that was so discouraging for her. At the time I was talking to her, she had permed hair and she didn't really like it, but she didn't have an option. But at the same time, she also told me a very inspiring story of how she had gotten a scholarship to the Oprah Winfrey Leadership Academy, I think at that point she had just joined the Oprah Winfrey Leadership Academy, and she was telling me that for her it's such a life-changing moment because she comes from a very poor family, and being part of this institution is also developing her leadership skills. So well done, Oprah. All right. Never have I ever saved a life. I have never saved a life, and I don't even think I have any skills to save a life. I have been thinking about it, and I've realized I don't even have first aid skills. And even as I speak, I think we as young people need to take these first aid skills seriously. For example, how to handle a snake bite, how to, like life-threatening issues where you'll need to do first aid, how to help someone who's choking. Yeah, those kinds of skills, I think they're very, very important. Learning how to be a lifesaver. You could be a very good swimmer, but you don't know how to save someone who is drowning. That's also another skill that you might need that could help you to save a life. So never have I ever saved a life, and yeah, it's a challenge to all of us to find a way of saving a life at some point, especially learning some crucial first aid skills. All right. Never have I ever written a book. I have never written a book. A few years ago, I was inspired to write a book, but I think my inspiration was a bit kind of off. I think I didn't have the right inspiration. I wanted to write a book, but I think I didn't have the inspiration to write a book. And then even the topic I wanted to write about, now I look back and I'm like, would it really have helped somebody? But now that I'm a few years older, I think I'm now 3 years older from that point. If I was to write a book, I think I'd like to share insights on being a young leader in Africa, looking for opportunity in Africa. Basically what I'm talking about on this channel, but summarized like in an organized way in a book. So never have I ever written a book, but I hope that I'll write a book at some point. I have read Michelle Obama's book, Chimamanda's books, Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala. Actually, the reason I'm even thinking about leadership is because I read this book called Women in Leadership that's been co-authored by Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, who's the Director General of the World Trade Organization, and Julia Gillard, who is the former Prime Minister of Australia. And they interviewed women leaders across the world. So from Christina Lagarde of the IMF to Anna Solberg of Norway, to so many women leaders. I'm forgetting all their names, but they interviewed them and they were talking about all the issues that women face, from discrimination to sexual harassment, motherhood, mentorship, all those conversations in one book, and I truly loved it. I'd recommend that book, Women in Leadership by Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala and Julia Gillard. You can get it on Audible. You can listen to it. That's how I got to know about it. I just listened to it on Audible. And then you can also buy it from Textbook Center. The last time I was there, I checked the price and it was 2,500 Kenya shillings. Yes. All right. Never have I ever been on stage in front of a crowd. I have been in front of a crowd numerous times. But the very first time I was in front of a crowd, I'm trying to remember when, but my earliest recollection of being in front of a crowd was when I think I was in class 4 and I was reciting a shairi in front of school. I know a lot of people have recited shairis and poems in front of their schools. But one of the most recent ones was when I spoke on Dada Sphere about being a young woman in leadership and how mentorship has changed my life. More recently, opening the Global Education Summit that was co-hosted by the government of Kenya and the government of the United Kingdom. So I have spoken in front of crowds many, many times. The confidence has been growing over the years. I think with every crowd that I need to address, that's my confidence keeps growing and my skills keep growing because I'm always there trying to learn how to speak better, how to articulate my issues, how to phrase my sentences, and basically all that. If you want to learn more about communication, of course, I have done so many videos on this channel about it. One of them is communication skills, being a good communicator. There's also how to speak like Obama. If you check this playlist that's called educational content, you'll get all that content over there. So if you're curious on how you can improve your communication skills, make sure you check out the rest of this playlist. All right. Never have I ever read a novel in one day. I have thought about it. I don't think in 2 days, maybe the shorter versions. For example, there's this book called The Trouble with Nigeria by Chinua Achebe, and Chinua Achebe was talking about that the trouble with Nigeria is not the lack of resources. The trouble with Nigeria is the lack of good leadership, and I think that is the trouble with every other continent, every other country in this continent. The trouble is not usually the lack of resources. If you look at the resources in Africa, you'll find there's diamond, there's gold, there's flaspa, there's salt, there's basically all sorts of resources that we can utilize. And then African people, especially the youth and children, are really smart people. We are really hardworking. But yes, the challenge with our continent is the lack of good leadership. So well done to Chinua Achebe. I think I took 2 days to read that book. The other book I probably took 2 days was the one by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie, the one where she wrote, was it letters to her daughter on how to be a feminist? Yeah, something like that, yeah. How to be a feminist. And was it Dear Ijiawala? I'm going to show you the book here so that you see it. But yes, I have never read a novel in one day, but 2 days, yes. All right. Lastly, never have I ever been a foreign exchange student. I have never been a foreign exchange student, but to be honest, I have always secretly wanted to be a foreign exchange student. I got this idea from when I was in high school, where we used to have exchange programs. People would go to this school in America. I don't remember the name of the school, and some would go to another school in the UK, and then the next term the students from those schools would come to our school and we'd get to interact with them. Unfortunately, I never got to be a foreign exchange student. I know that even at the university, there are students who had the opportunity to be exchange students abroad. Like one of my friends had the opportunity to be an exchange student at King's College London. So I know the opportunity is still there. I have seen even master's students usually have that opportunity to be exchange students. So maybe God willing, in the future, when I'm pursuing my postgraduate, or rather my master's program, I will look out for those exchange programs and see if I can be part of them. But yes, I have wanted to be a foreign exchange student. Why? Because from what I experienced from high school, the little that I was able to see, is that you get to experience a different culture. And then guess what? You even get to learn in more than one institution. You know, sometimes you can just get bored. You're like, I'm going to the same school every day. I think also being in a different environment kind of brings you some new inspiration. You also get to make new friends. I mean, who doesn't want friends? Okay, some people don't like being around too many people, but you also get to make a few new friends. You might make some lifetime connections. You might be in spaces where you'll get to learn about other opportunities like jobs or like further studies. It could be maybe the place where you're going to meet your life partners, you are going to meet your mentors. Who knows? There's really so much benefit with being a foreign exchange student. And then it also gets to grow your resume. So you can imagine if you write that you have been a foreign exchange student. I've seen so many job opportunities where they usually say we want a person who has been able to interact with a culturally diverse background. So you see, you'll have checked that box. You can say, I am a culturally diverse young person from Kenya or from Africa, and you give an example of when you are a foreign exchange student in whatever space you are in. Also, when you think about being a foreign exchange student, when I was at the Pan-African Youth Forum in 2019 in Addis Ababa, there's this suggestion where someone said that it is one of the ways of empowering young people, and have really emphasized to you on that. The 1 million by 2021 initiative by the African Union actually emphasizes on education as one of its arms. And yes, being a foreign exchange student is one of the aspects of education. I hope that you have enjoyed something from this random Never Have I Ever. I think it brings out so many diverse aspects of leadership for you as a young person in Africa. Do also tell me if you have ever done some of the things I've mentioned here, or you've never done some of the things I've mentioned here, and maybe you'd like to try them out. Comment below. My call to action to you today is to check out my video on where I was talking about how you can be featured in major newspapers. I remember in my first Never Have I Ever, I talked about whether I've ever been featured on TV or radio. So in that video, I give you tips on how you can also get into that space if you're looking for some exposure as a young person. And this is not necessarily for you to be famous. It's also because we are living in a generation where we as young people have our hard copy CVs, the one where you type on Microsoft Word, and you also have our digital imprint on the internet. So a lot of times when you're applying for opportunities, you'll see they're going to ask, share a link of where you've ever been featured online, or share a link to your online profile, something like that. And if you get featured on TV once or twice, you can use these videos in your portfolio when you're applying for these opportunities. So make sure you check out that video, and do tell a friend to tell a friend. Follow me on Instagram at CynthiaOprah_Nyongesa, on Twitter at Cynthia_Oprah, and I will see you in the next episode.